Hello everyone, my name is Ainun Khalila and this is my oral summary for the first video of the independent study task. The title of this video is Effective Communication Skills and it's presented by Alex Leon. This video is actually part of a 7-part mini course called Concise, Clear and Confident Communication. It focuses on how to communicate better, not by talking a lot, but by talking clearly, simply, and with confidence. Alex Leon explains that communication is a skill, not a natural talent, so it can be practiced and improved. That part really motivated me to keep learning how to speak better. In the first lesson, Alex talks about something called long-windedness. It basically means talking too much or using too many words. He says that being long-winded is one of the biggest enemies of good communication. Some people believe that talking more means communicating better, but it's actually the opposite. When we talk too much, people may get bored or lose focus. Sometimes we do it without realizing it, maybe because we feel nervous or we want to look smart or we want to make sure people understand us. Alex gives an example of a doctor who talks a lot just to prove that he's intelligent. But even if people don't tell him directly that he's too talkative, they might still think he's hard to talk to. That's why Alex says we need to find out why we talk too much and fix it. He gives 3 strategies. First, figure out why you talk too much. Ask yourself, when do I tend to overtalk? Is it when I feel nervous or when I want to impress others? This step is about being honest with yourself. I can relate to this because I sometimes talk fast when I feel unsure about what I'm saying. I try to fill the silence. After watching this, I realized that silence isn't a bad thing. It can actually make you sound more confident. And second, rate yourself. Alex suggests rating your communication style from 1 to 10. If you're concise, you are around 1 to 4. If you are long-winded, you are closer to 10. The goal is to stay below 5, to say what's necessary, not everything that crosses your mind. And third, commit to being concise. Alex quotes Franklin D. Roosevelt, who said, "Be sincere, be brief, and be seated." It means say what you mean honestly, keep it short, and stop when you are done. This quote really stuck with me. Sometimes we feel like we need to explain everything, but people will respect us more if we speak clearly and it nicely. So, the first lesson is simple but powerful. Understand why you talk too much, measure your habits, and practice being concise. The second lesson is about keeping your overall message tight, which means focused and straight to the point. Alex shares a quote from Mark Twain. "I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead." It sounds funny, but it's true. Being short and clear actually takes effort. People appreciate when we speak clearly and don't waste their time. Alex shares 3 tips to do that. First, go straight on the main point. Skip long introductions, background theories, or unnecessary details. Focus on what the listener needs to know, not what's just nice to know. For example, if your friends ask, "Can you help me with my project?" Don't start explaining your whole schedule. Just say, "Sure, when do you need it?" That's the heart of the message. And second, make your point and stop. Say what you need to say, then pause and let the other person respond. Many people keep talking because they think the listener wants to hear more, but actually, the listener is just waiting for their turn to speak. And third, finish a little earlier than expected. If you have 30 minutes to talk, finish in 28. If someone gives you 5 minutes, use only 4. People will always always appreciate when you respect their time. This lesson reminded me of time when I used to make long explanation, like when I gave class presentation. I thought the more I said, the better I'd sound. But sometimes my friends look confused. Now I realize that saying less but with clarity makes a stronger impressions. In lesson 3, Alex gives practical advice. Use short sentences and simple words. He shares a quote by Oliver Wendell Holmes: "Speak clearly. If you speak at all, carve every word before you let it fall." It means we should choose our words carefully. Every sentence should have a purpose. Short sentence sounds more confident and easier to remember. Alex mentions a comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, who works very hard to make his jokes short and powerful. For example, one of his jokes goes like this: "They can't go stale because they were never fresh." It's funny because it's simple, no extra words, but still clear and effective. Alex also reminds us to use plain English. Many people use difficult words like commence instead of start or terminate instead of end just to sound smart. But simple words are stronger because everyone can understand. Okay. Short sentences sound more confident and easier to remember. Alex mentions a comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, who works very hard to make his jokes short and powerful. For example, one of his jokes goes like this: "They can't go stale because they were never fresh." It's funny because it's simple, no extra words, but still clear and effective. Alex also reminds us to use plain English. Many people use difficult words like commence instead of start or terminate instead of end just to sound smart. But simple words are stronger because everyone can understand them. This part really connects. Sometimes I overthink my words, especially when speaking English. I used to worry about using fancy words to sound good, but now I realize that speaking simply is better. As long as people understand you, that's what matters most. In conclusion, this video taught me that effective communication doesn't mean talking a lot. It means talking with purpose, be concise, focus on your main point, and use short, simple language. Now I'm going to continue to the second video titled "The Science Behind Dramatically Better Conversations" by Charles Duhigg. This video talks about something that looks simple but is actually very important: how to have better conversations. We talk every day with friends, teachers, family, and even strangers. But if you really think about it, how many of those conversations actually feel meaningful? Sometimes we talk a lot but don't really listen, or we get stuck in a small talk that doesn't connect us to people. That's exactly what Charles Duhigg explains in this TED Talk: why some conversations work, why others fail, and how we can use science to make our conversation better. At the beginning, Charles Duhigg says that many people think they're good at talking, but the truth is we're often not very good at it. He tells a story about meeting someone who talked non-stop for 1 whole hour without asking him a single question. That's when he realized that good conversations are not about talking at people, but talking with them. He explains that conversations often fail because people don't truly listen. Instead of listening to understand, we listen to reply. We wait for our turn to speak, not to connect. And honestly, I can relate to that. Sometimes when my friends are telling a story, I catch myself thinking about what I'm going to say next, not really paying attention to their words. After watching this video, I realized that I need to slow down and just listen. Because when we don't really listen, we miss the chance to truly connect. Then, he explains what scientists have found about great communicators. They discovered that good conversationalists that don't just talk, they respond. There's a big difference between reacting and responding. When we react, we just give automatic answers. But when we respond, we actually process what the other person said and build on it. For example, if someone says, "I'm so tired from work today," a reaction would be, "Oh yeah, me too." But a response would be, "You made your day so tiring." See the difference? The second one shows curiosity and care, and that's what makes patience meaningful. Dewey calls this active listening when we don't just hear words but show that we understand and care about what's being said. He says that active listening is one of the main skills that make people feel respected and heard. One of my favorite parts of the video is when he talks about turn taking. He shares research from Google about what makes teams work effectively, and surprisingly, the best teams aren't the ones with the smartest people, but the ones where everyone had a chance to talk. In other words, good communication happens when people take turns, when everyone speaks and everyone listens. It's about balance. I could really see that in my own life too. Sometimes when we have group discussion, there's always one person who dominates the conversation, right? They talk a lot while others just nod and stay quiet. When that happens, the discussion feels one-sided. But when everyone gets a turn to share their thoughts, the discussion becomes more alive, and even shy people, like me sometimes, feel more confident to speak up. That's exactly what Duhigg means by turn taking, balance between speaking and listening. So, how can we practice having better conversation? Charles Duhigg gives a few simple but powerful tips. First, be curious. Ask real questions, not just small talk. Instead of asking, "How are you?" and moving on, try asking, "What was the best part of your day?" That question invites people to share more about themselves. And second, listen actively. Show that you are listening by nodding, smiling, or asking follow-up questions like, "You said you were nervous before your presentation. How did it go?" These small signals make people feel heard. Third, be willing to learn something new. Sometimes we enter conversation only to share our opinions, not to listen or learn. But Duhigg says good conversation are a chance to discover something, a new story, a new idea, or even a new way of seeing things. In conclusion, this video taught me that good conversations are not about how much we talk, but how much we listen and connect. It's about curiosity, balance, and empathy. Charles Duhigg says that every great conversation is like a dance. You talk, then you listen, then you respond. It's not one person leading the whole time. It's about moving together naturally. So from now on, I want to practice being more curious, more patient, and more present in conversation. Because good communication isn't just about speaking, it's about understanding. Now let's move on to the next video. The title of this video is Think Fast, Talk Smart Communication Techniques by Matt Abrahams. This talk really inspired me because it's something I think all of us have experienced. Like he say spontaneous communications happens all the time, not only in public speaking, but also when a teacher suddenly asks a question, when someone asks for our opinion in class, or when we need to introduce ourselves without any preparation. And to be honest, this topic is really hit me because sometimes when I'm asked to speak suddenly or like during a class presentation or discussion, I'm a little panic. My heart beats faster, my hands feel cold, and my brain suddenly forgets everything that I want to say. But after watching this video, I realized that I'm not alone. Almost everyone feels that way. And math starts by saying that around 85% of people feel nervous when speaking in public. So if we feel that way, it doesn't mean we're weak, it just means we're human. And he adds something very powerful. Nervousness isn't always bad. It actually means we care about what we're doing. Instead of fighting our nervousness, we need to learn how to manage it. Matt shares 3 simple ways to do that. First, accept that you're nervous. Don't think of it's a problem. Think of its energy. He says try changing your self-talk from "Oh no, I'm nervous" to "I'm excited." That small shift can make a big difference. I've tried this during my own presentation, and it really helped when I remind myself that I'm nervous because I care. I feel calmer and more focused. Second, change the way you see speaking. Many people see speaking as a performance, like we have to be perfect and impress everyone. But Matt says instead of thinking of it as a performance, think of it as a conversation. When we focus on connecting with people instead of trying to be perfect, we sound more natural and confident. And third, stay in the present moment. When we're nervous, we often think too far ahead. What if I forgot what to say? Or what if people don't like my answer? Matt suggests focusing only on what's happening right now. What you're saying, who you're talking to, and what you want to share. He even suggests doing simple exercise before speaking, like stretching, walking around, or saying tongue twisters like she sells seashells by the seashore. These little things help our brain relax and focus. After talking about anxiety, Matt shares the secret to think fast and speaking smart, and that is using structure. Even when we speak spontaneously, we can still sound organized if we use a simple structure to guide our thoughts. He introduced one of his favorite methods called what, so what, and now what. Let me explain it in a simple way. What, it's like what happened or what's the topic. So what, like why does it matter? And now what, like what should we do next or what can we learn from it? These structures helps us stay clear and focused even without preparation. For example, imagine a teacher suddenly asks, "What do you think about using AI in education?" You could answer like this: "What? Like AI is a great tool that helps students learn faster. So what? Because it gives us access to information and helps us practice English more easily. And now what? But we still need to use it wisely. It should support learning, not replace it." See, the answer is short, clear, and sounds confident, even if it's spontaneous. Matt also reminds us that one of the biggest obstacles in communication is ourselves. Sometimes we overthink before speaking. We want to find the perfect word, or we worry about what people will think, but the more we think, the harder it becomes to speak. He says something that really stuck with me: get out of your own way. In other words, stop judging yourself too much. Just start talking. Once you begin, your ideas will flow naturally. I remember one time during a group discussion, I stayed quiet for a while because I was scared my answer would sound silly. But when I finally spoke, I realized that my point actually made sense and my group mates agreed. After that, I became more confident to speak up even when I wasn't 100% sure. So sometimes we just need to start, not wait until everything sounds perfect. Matt also says that spontaneous speaking is a skill, not a talent. That means anyone can learn it with practice. He suggests practicing in small ways. For example, by summarizing what you just watched, talking out loud to yourself, or explaining something simple to a friend. Personally, I've tried doing this after watching videos. I try to explain the main points in English as if I'm teaching someone else. At first, it felt awkward, but the more I did it, the more natural it became. Now, when I have to speak suddenly in class, I don't panic as much. I just breathe, and start talking. In conclusion, Matt Abrahams teaches that good communication doesn't mean never being nervous. It means being able to manage your thoughts and emotion while you speak. We can't control every situation, but we can control how we respond by accepting our nervousness, focusing on connection, using structure, and practicing often. We can all think fast and talk smart. Now I know that I don't have to sound perfect. I just need to sound real, and that's what confidence really is. Not about being flawless, but being genuine and prepared. Next, let's move on to the fourth video. The title is Mastering the Art of Everyday Diplomacy. This talk is presented by Alisher Faizulev, a former ambassador who now studies and teaches about the importance of diplomacy, not just in politics but in our daily lives. At the beginning of his talks, he asked a simple question: do you see yourself as a diplomat in your everyday life? When I heard that, I smiled because honestly, I never thought of myself as a diplomat. I used to think diplomats were only people who work in government, travel around the world, and attend international meetings. But after watching this video, I realized that diplomacy actually happens all around us, at home, at school, at work, and even among friends. It's about how we stay calm, polite, and respectful, even when we disagree with others. Mr. Faizulev explains that traditional diplomacy happens between countries, while everyday diplomacy happens between people. Even though they are different, they share the same purpose: to live peacefully among difference. He says that in our social world, we are surrounded by people with different ideas, beliefs, and behaviors. This agreement is a normal part of life, but the way we handle those differences is what makes us peaceful or conflicted. When I think about it that really makes sense. In group projects or class discussions, sometimes my friends and I have different opinions. If one person gets emotional, it can easily turn into conflict. But if we stay calm and respectful, we can find balance and understanding. That's what everyday diplomacy looks like. The first thing we need is, according to Mr. Faizulev, is peace of mind, an inner sense of calmness and tolerance. He says peace of mind helps us stay stable and patient even when things get hard. Peace of mind comes from three things. One, tolerance, accepting that people are different. Patience, like not reacting too fast when things don't go our way. Next is appreciation, like learning to value those differences instead of fighting them. I personally find this very meaningful. Sometimes when I feel stressed or tired. Even small disagreements can make me upset. But when I take a breath and remind myself that people have different perspectives, I feel calmer. That's when I realize how important peace of mind is. It's the first step to being an everyday diplomat. The second element of diplomacy is what he calls the strategy of balance. He says that diplomacy is all about balance between defending our own rights and respecting others. We shouldn't only think about my way or your way, but try to find a fair and peaceful middle ground. To explain this, he uses the symbol of yin and yang, two opposite forces that actually complete balance comes from three main things: routine, staying true to your values like honesty and kindness; resilience, being able to stay strong and calm when things go wrong; moderateness, avoiding extremes and reacting wisely. I could really relate to this. There were times when I strongly believed my idea was right in a discussion, but after listening to others, I realized their point also made sense. That moment taught me that balance doesn't mean giving up your opinion, it means finding harmony between your perspective and others. Next, Mr. Faizulev talks about two main skill sets we need for diplomacy. It's social interaction skills and self-regulation skills. For social interaction, it says we need understanding, tactfulness, respect, and negotiation. Understanding means truly listening to others, not just hearing their words, but trying to feel what they mean. Tactfulness means being careful with that we say and showing empathy through our words and tone. Respect means keeping the dignity of others, even when we disagree, and negotiating means finding a win-win solution, not just trying to prove who's right. He say negotiation is a big part of everyday life. We negotiate with friends about where to eat, with classmates about group tasks, or even with family about small decisions. In all of those, being diplomatic means staying kind, honest, and patient. The second skill is self-regulation of or controlling our emotions. He says being calm is essential. Even when other people are angry or rude, we can practice this through breathing, relaxing our body, and letting go of unnecessary resistance. When we're calm, we can think more clearly and act more wisely. And honestly, I've experienced this myself. Sometimes when I feel nervous or someone talks in a harsh tone, I used to freeze or get defensive. But when I started focusing on staying calm, breathing slowly before I respond, I could handle the situation much better. Mr. Faizulev also reminds us that culture plays a big role in diplomacy. Different cultures have different ways of showing politeness or respect. He gives an example from Uzbekistan, where it's considered polite to give your seat to the elderly on public transport. Sometimes polite in one culture might not mean the same in another. That's why cultural awareness is so important. He also says that diplomacy is not weakness, it's strength. It takes inner strength to stay honest, kind, and calm when others are not. Because true diplomacy comes from integrity, from being truthful, respectful, and consistent. At the end of the talk, he asks everyone to do a small exercise. He tells the audience to look at the person next to them, notice what makes them different, and say something kind. I think that's such a beautiful message that diplomacy begins with appreciation. When we notice and respect what makes people different, we build bridges instead of walls. In my own experience, I've learned that smiling and speaking kindly can change the mood of a situation. Even a small act like saying thank you or giving a compliment can make someone's day better, and that's already a form of everyday diplomacy. In conclusion, everyday diplomacy means using peace, balance, and kindness in our daily interactions. We don't need to be ambassadors to be diplomats, we just need empathy, patience, and self control. Okay, so this is the last part of my independent study oral summary. The video that I watched is titled Word Englishes, presented by David Crystal, a linguist who explains how English has changed and grown all around the world. At first, I thought the title sounded a bit strange, Englishes with an ES, but he explains that the word Englishes actually means different kinds of English that exist today, not just one, instead of thinking there's only one correct version, like British or American English, we now recognize that there are many Englishes, such as Indian English, Nigerian English, Singaporean English, or even Indonesian English. David Crystal says that when a country adopts English, it immediately adapts to it. It changes the language to fit its people, culture, and environment, because language exists to help us talk about our own world, right? So when English spreads to different places, people start using it to describe their own experience, things that don't exist in Britannia or America. For example, when the first English speakers arrived in America hundreds of years ago, they saw new plants, animals, and cultures they had never seen before. So they borrowed words from Native American language like moccasin, wigwam, and skunk. That's how American English started to grow, not after hundreds of years, but just weeks after they arrived. And the same thing happens everywhere today. In each country, people mix English with local words to express their own ideas, traditions, and humor. And Crystal gives a funny story from South Africa. He says one time he saw a road sign that said robot ahead. He was confused. He thought, what? Robots on the road? But then he learned that in South African English, a robot means a traffic light. So when people there say turn left at the robot, it simply means turn left at the traffic light. That story really shows how local culture changed the meanings of English words. He even says the dictionary of South African English contains over 10,000 words that are only used in South Africa. Some come from African, Zulu, or other local language. When I heard that, I thought that's actually kind of beautiful. It means every country that uses English gives it a local flavor. Like Indonesian, we often mix English with Bahasa Indonesia. We say things like, I'm so lazy today, sumpah. That's also our version of word Englishes. And Crystal makes another interest point. Even native speakers sometimes don't understand local English varieties. He says when he visits another country like South Africa, even he doesn't always understand their English. So actually, there's no big difference between a native and non-native speaker. We can all be foreigners to each other in different places. That made me feel more confident about my own English, because sometimes I worry about sounding not native enough, but after watching this I realized there's no single correct English. What matters is communication, that people understand each other even if our accents or vocabulary are different. And Crystal also explains that every country has its own expressions that are hard to translate. For example, in British English, people say it was like Clapham Junction in there, which means it was very crowded. But unless you know Clapham Junction is a busy train station in London, you won't understand the expressions. He says the same thing happens in every country. Local references, slang, or jokes make that variety of English unique. So, if someone from Serbia says something related to their local politics or culture, he might not understand it. And that's okay. That's what makes World English is so interesting. It reflects who we are and where we come from. When I think about Indonesia, we do this all the time too. We might say something like, that class was as crowded as Pasar Lama. A foreigner might not get it, but Indonesians know exactly what it means. That's our own cultural version of English. It's Indonesian English. And at the end, Crystal reminds us that the growth of English around the world is not about losing its purity. It's about celebrating diversity. Each English variety represents a story about people, history, and identity. He says as English becomes global, it becomes more colorful and expressive because every culture adds something new to it. For me, this video felt very encouraging. Sometimes learners like us feel shy to speak because we're afraid of making grammar mistakes or sounding different from British or American speakers, but now I see that it's okay, even beautiful to have our own version of English. As long as we speak clearly, respectfully, and with confidence, we're part of the world of Englishes too. So, the conclusion is, Word Englishes teach us that English has many varieties, not just one. Each country adapts English to fit its own culture and needs. Even native speakers can feel lost in other English varieties. And that's what makes language so amazing. It connects us, but also celebrates our difference. So, thank you so much for watching and listening of my oral summary. I hope you enjoy and maybe you learn something too, because at the end, communication isn't just about speaking English. It's about sharing our humanity through language. Thank you.